Welcome to the Cerebellium Research Center. My name is Dr. Gareth Evans. Nice to meet you. I don't represent the Research Center here, I should say that straight away. I represent the Ethics in Science Committee, and I'm here on their behest to coordinate public consultation about the research that's happening here. Well, actually it's not happening, it's paused at the moment until we come to some decisions about how it can proceed. I'm grateful to all of you, each and every one of you, for participating in this consultation. Professor Kurtz, who heads up the research here, is going to make his case to you one at a time, and his assistant Amanda will call on you and take you up every 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I can introduce to you the research that happens here, and perhaps start a debate and inform you of any details that you need to make your decision. First of all, let me go back in time to 1997 when Cerebellium started. It started with, or was enabled because of a gift made to Bangor University, a very kind legacy, and it attracted a lot of interest, a lot of scientists from all over the world, experts in nanotechnology, in neuroscience and cybernetics. Now 2 years ago something quite remarkable happened, which created this new ethical dimension, which we're here to discuss today. Maybe it's easier if I show you. This is the object that was donated, object K, a human brain. Now 2 years ago, this brain demonstrated the neural correlates of consciousness. What that means is that consciousness appeared in this brain. Since then, Professor Kurtz and his team and MIT in America have developed an interface to be able to communicate with this brain and to create a simulated reality for it. And what has emerged is a personality called Kevin. Now Kevin wakes up, he goes to work, he eats, he sleeps, he dreams, he has relationships just like all of us. And Professor Kurtz feels passionately that Kevin should know about his real situation. And that's where we've stepped in to ask whether actually Kevin has that right, or whether indeed he has the right not to know. So the questions we'd like you to decide upon this evening are: should Kevin know? Should Kevin not be told and remain in this illusion of a life? Or should indeed this experiment come to an end because fundamentally it is ethically wrong? Now, my background is philosophy. I'm not an expert in this field, and I think it would be an error in a philosophical frame to be able to try and put yourself into Kevin's shoes, because Kevin doesn't have shoes, he doesn't have feet. So empathy might not be the most useful thing to do. To empathize with Kevin might not be the most useful thing to do. The best way to approach this, I would suggest, is to imagine that this reality, what we're experiencing now, is all a play. It's all a fiction. And indeed, our whole world is an illusion. What do you want to know? Would you want to know that this is an illusion? And if you can answer that, you're on your way to answering whether Kevin should know. Now, I do have a file with some technical details in it, should you need to ask me. Does anybody have any questions?
Final consultee, please. This way, please. Proceed this way, please. Thank you very much. Professor Kurtz insists we carry out this part of the procedure with the door closed. Thank you.
Oh, it's cold.
Would you like some water with warmth in it?
Yes, please.
This H2O has been heated.
Oh.
Most unusual that we only have one hand here.
Why is everything labelled?
Well, I would have thought it was obvious.
Not really.
Excuse my colleague. However, if it is not immediately obvious to you, we have an extremely strict cleaning regime here. As you can imagine, we take cleanliness extremely seriously in our laboratory.
That's nice. I haven't had my hands washed since I was a child.
Indeed. I assure you I am a professional. I am highly qualified and most experienced. Do not worry about only having one hand. I'm sure you will find the other one as you go through our laboratory.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Is that a cream, is it?
Indeed, it is an extremely important part of our preparation of the consultees before they enter our laboratory. Excellent. Thank you. If you would like to follow me this way, please. Thank you. And if I can ask you to take a seat over here, please. Thank you. And could I ask you to remove your shoes, please? Thank you. If you'd like to remain seated, and we will wait for Professor Kurtz to be ready for you. Unfortunately, his timekeeping skills are getting worse. I've already had him at 2 skills workshops for timekeeping, and they do not seem to be making any difference whatsoever. In fact, I think he's getting worse. Professor Kurtz, you have finished.
This is the entrance. As you go through this laboratory,
Professor Kurtz won't keep you much longer.
remind yourself of this experience several times. Is your reality really much stronger than games? Thank you. Enjoy. Next.
Professor is ready. Thank you. Please
crazy.
proceed to
After
Professor
you.
Kurtz's office. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you do?
I'm okay.
Good. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
It's my questionnaire.
Indeed. Want to come to the window and admire the world with me? How beautiful is the world?
Yes.
Isn't the world a magnificent thing?
Yeah.
All these colors, scents, textures, noises, smells. A symphony for the senses, really. And all of it an illusion created by your brain every second of your life. None of it real. Ever thought of this?
No.
Okay, it's about time we do it. As far as I'm concerned, you could be a brain in a vat, somewhere in a laboratory, lurking in the dark. And technology allowing, which is just around the corner really, we could inject in that brain everything you experience of the world, every little detail, the draft from this window, the noise of the cars on the avenue, my voice speaking to you right now. You will know the difference. So let me ask you this question. Which one of the two are you? The brain in the vat, or the person you think you are?
I hope I'm the person I think I am.
You want to gamble? I like it. Let's gamble. Somehow this is very relevant for the story of our friend here, Kevin. This is the human image we gave Kevin himself. You see, Kevin is a brain in a vat. You understand that? You've been told, haven't you?
Yeah.
He doesn't know that he doesn't look like this. Don't you think it's fundamentally unfair that he doesn't know?
Yeah, I guess.
Good. Because we are in the same spirit, two of us. Of course, you don't need to make your call right away. You're going through the visit of the laboratory and you can make the decision later. You're here for that purpose. In the meantime, let me give you my opinion. I think you should know as soon as possible. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the concept of truth is directly connected to the concept of free will. These two things are just part of the same thing. If you don't have the truth, you don't have the choice. It's that simple. We make every minute of Kevin's existence. We decide what he goes through. We decide what he sees, what he encounters. There's no moment where he can say, hey guys, I don't want to do this. I think that's fundamentally unfair. If he knew of his condition, he could tell us, actually, I don't want this, or I want that. He doesn't have free will. Do you understand? That's my view, but I don't ask you to share this. You can make your own decision later. In the meantime, can I test your reality?
Yeah. Okay.
Good. I mean, your reality. Come here. Take a look at this poster here. Are these dots white?
Yeah.
All of them?
They turn black as well.
Turn black.
Yeah.
Don't be ridiculous. It's a poster. It's printed. Look here. Look around this. Anything special?
Yeah, it's all moving.
It's a poster. It cannot move. You see the problem?
Yeah.
Good. You're going to tell me perhaps it's some kind of visual illusion.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that, come here. I'm going to show you an illusion. Look at this this building here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Opposite down there.
Yeah.
Is it real?
Yeah.
Have you touched every brick of it?
No, but I've seen it several times. I've walked past it.
Have you touched the sun?
No.
Have you touched the stars?
No.
How do you know they exist?
Well, if they didn't, we wouldn't be around.
That's pure reasoning. You just dismissed motion here. But you don't dismiss the stars, even though the only access you have to this is your vision. I think my point, come here, stand here and look into that hole. Can you look in the hole here? Can you see my eye? Look at my eye carefully. Don't look away. This is the kind of visual illusion I created for Kevin. Do you know why?
Why?
I want Kevin to understand that the world is not that simple. His reality is perfect. We made it. We created it flawless. So how could he doubt it for a second? If I introduce illusion in his world, perhaps he can understand that his reality is not quite as it seems. Do you see my cunning plan here? Unfortunately, I've been stopped in my track by this public inquiry, which is driving me completely nuts, and I have to wait. It's kind of really annoying, but I'll be patient. I'll wait for the outcome before I can start my work again. In the meantime, let me ask you this question. Is this real or is it not real? Do you see the problem?
Oh. Yeah.
This is how fragile our reality is. Thank you for following this demonstration. I'm now going to check your fit for purpose. Is that alright? Okay, are you wobbly? Resist the movement. Oh, that's not bad. Are you afraid of the dark?
No.
You seem quite certain. That's good for you. Can you go on all fours, please? Checking mobility there. That's good. Excellent. You can stand up again. Congratulations. And now can you come here and read these letters to me aloud, please?
HKLWKMNZXP.
Good. Can you read them again? With your hand over your mouth. Press firmly.
HKLWKMNZXP.
Not very impressive, is it? But then considering you had your hand over your mouth, that's probably the reason. Thank you very much. Congratulations, you passed.
Thank you.
You can now go in the laboratory.
Thanks.
Thank you there. This is the door of the laboratory.
Okay.
As you go along this trip, I'd like you to remind yourself of this question at all times. Is your reality really much stronger than Kevin's?
Oh. Thanks.
Please take a seat. Focus on this face and imagine this is Kevin's face. Look at it in the eyes for a while. To Kevin, he appears to be moving around the world rather than the world is moving around him. By now, your world should have started rotating. And I should have disappeared as well. Behind this curtain, there is a corridor and a mirror. We suggest that you spend some time looking yourself in the mirror, and you will be invited to move on soon. While looking, consider this. If you are the face looking back, who is the person looking? Are they the same one? Which is the real one? The you that you can see, or the you that you can't see?
Professor Kurtz really wants you to see what it's like to be Kevin, and when Kevin is working, this is very similar to what he would be looking at, because in a simulated reality that we've created for Kevin, he actually works in a lab, just like this one, and his job is to create puzzles for Kay to solve. Of course, he doesn't actually realize that he is in fact Kay himself. We created this simulated reality for him because we really felt that if there's ever a need to tell him about his true situation, then it would be easier for him to understand. This is one of the puzzles that he's created, and I would like you to give it a try, so I'll explain the rules to you. There are 3 different sizes of cylinders, small, medium, and large. Small ones can only go into empty space, medium ones can only go over small ones, and large ones can only go over medium ones. In each move you make, you can only move to the surrounding cylinders, and the aim is to make a row of 3 small cylinders. That can be horizontal, vertical, diagonal, any way, as long as it's a row of 3 small ones. So give it a try.
I don't know.
You're actually incredibly close. Should I just show you?
Go on.
Okay. So you could have moved this one here.
Ah, yes. Ah.
So that's one way of solving it, but there's also another method that I'd like to just quickly show you.
Sure.
So let me just reset it quickly. Right, so that was one method of solving it, but you could have maybe just done that.
Ah.
So I guess sometimes we think that there are rules that don't actually really exist, but that's just an automatic response. And sorry, I couldn't help but notice just now, if you don't mind, could you just... Right, okay. Is that on the outside as well? Right,
What is that?
I mean, I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but maybe it's better to be safe than sorry. There's soap over there.
Okay.
A lot of us think that we're initiating every single one of our actions, when in reality, a lot of the time, these are just automatic responses to stimuli received by the brain. So Kevin, like us, is living a substantial portion of his life just on autopilot, really.
I see.
It's important to know that each and every one of us, we have this constant and reassuring thought, which occurs 50 times a second. And it's a thought that says, I'm free to choose.
Oh.
When we dream, we have a body that moves through an imagined world. And this is how it is for Kevin. Even though he doesn't have an actual body, he feels as though he does. He feels pain and pleasure, fear and joy. He feels awake and he feels asleep. This is Kevin dreaming.
just like to crawl through. And if I can just get you to lie along here with your head at this end, just on your back, that would be great. And ideally flat. I'm one of the research assistants here at the lab, and every morning about 8 o'clock, Kevin wakes up when we stimulate parts of K. And when we're doing it, it kind of sort of makes me think about dreaming and reality, because we all wake up and we all go about our daily lives and then we go to sleep, and it's perfectly natural to inhabit this dream world which makes no sense at all to us most of the time, but there's always the odd moment where you have a dream and it feels so real it's almost a surprise when you wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, how hard would it be for me to tilt your reality on its axis? Just lift your head slightly, just to sort of look around the room.
Yeah. Where's up?
Where's up?
Yes.
And if you just want to have a look at the ceiling there, I have a short visualisation to show you about Kevin. He's technically my friend and work colleague here at the lab, but as you know, he's also our research subject, and actually we've never really met because everything he experiences happens in his own mind. But in his reality, he's got friends, and he's got family, and he knows the people that work here at the lab because that's where he's convinced he works as well. And he has hobbies and interests, like playing the piano and doing puzzles, as you heard and you saw. And he even feels emotions. I mean, he plays the piano because it makes him happy. But Professor Kurtz, the man you met at the beginning, he wants to tell Kevin that it's all not real, and it's more like a dream that he's fabricated in his own mind, with ultimate control down to us here at the lab. But we don't know if Kevin wants to know the truth about his reality. It'd be like me telling you that your reality is just made up of neural signals interpreted by your brain, and even if I knew you wanted to know the truth about your reality, it'd be almost impossible to convince you. I mean, you wouldn't believe me if I was telling you that every experience that you've ever had, every person you ever met, and all your family and all your friends, they weren't real, in the sense that you created them in your own mind, just like a dream. But his reality feels as real for him as yours does for you now. So in my opinion, I don't think we should tell him, because I think he's happy where he is in his wonderland. Or at least he's still helping us with our research. But that is just my opinion, and definitely have a think about these things, because you'll have a chance to meet with Kevin quite soon and be able to have a chat with him. But unfortunately, you must continue your visit round our lab, so feel free to sit up and have a look around the room, and then I'll show you the way out.
What? Good.
So we'd just like to go left out there and enjoy your visit around our lab.
Thank you.
There are some people who in their sleep become aware that they're dreaming. With practice, they can often feel as if they're in control of their dreams. In control of the light, for example. These people are called lucid dreamers. They often have techniques in order to wake themselves up. In the dream, they look at their hands.
You can move your right hand for me. And your left. Thank you. You can take a bead for me. And keep it safe, as you'll be needing it later on. Would you like to follow me?
Kevin?
Yes. Would you like to communicate with Kevin?
Yeah, okay.
We do so through a series of complex computer programs. For simplicity's sake and to make it accessible to you guys coming through on the consultation today, we've been able to simplify that down to Facebook. So if you'd like to chat to him online, you're very welcome to do so. The computer's just behind you. Type anything you'd like into the bottom here and press enter when you're ready. Would you like to communicate with Kevin? We do so through computer programs if that makes you feel more comfortable, so it's just like chatting to a normal person online. I don't usually do Facebook, but I can have a go. If you're typing down at the bottom here, type whatever you'd like and press enter when you're ready. you think that one's the red folder?
It didn't have a picture in.
That one doesn't have a picture in.
No.
What
This
colour
had a
do you
question.
what colour do you think that folder is?
I was thinking brown, but I thought red is quite close to brown, so
Which colour do you think this is?
purple, blue,
And this one?
green.
Would you like to see? This one is in fact yellow. This one next to it is green. And the red one that you're looking for is just there. That picture in there is for you.
Bit red.
You're welcome to have a look around with a torch to explore the colours. This is for you. Shall I take you through to my next colleague?
There was one person who came through who I felt a very deep affinity with. I have no idea who they are. but we shared quite a special moment. They seemed very immersed in the experience and very open to anything that happened. And because it's in the dark and because there were no words spoken, you kind of communicate on a much deeper level. And I'd say quite a lot of the experiences were like that, just this sense of connection.
That was very diplomatic. The best thing was seeing people's reactions when they had sort of gone through the dream sequence of the tunnels and being the next person, and having some really lovely moments where people had crawled all the way, not realising they could stand up, and then just sort of offering them a hand to help them up and sort of hearing their relief, really. That was really lovely.
I think for me, just being part of the experience as a whole. I mean, I've met some fantastic people, and also just people's reactions when they come in, when you can see that spark in their eye when they just understand something, and you feel so rewarded that something you've done can have such a reaction like that. So, just the whole experience, everything.
I guess the best thing for me was building it up from the ground and the whole construction work and everything. That was really fun. And also just seeing everyone's expressions as they came through my station, and yeah, seeing that people really enjoyed it. That was really rewarding.
For me, the best thing about Cerebellium is putting lubricant on people's necks and probing them. No, I'm joking. The best part is actually watching people's responses at the end of their experience. It's different.
Best thing was when people really saw the illusion and I disappeared for them. And they were nodding their head like, yeah, you disappeared, and they were seeing the illusion, which was very satisfying for them to actually work.
I guess meeting new people, talk to more people and not just stay in my settled bubble of friendship kind of thing. So, and through talking to them, I meet more people as well. So.
That's hard. The whole thing was wonderful. The best bits, I guess, when it was happening, and it was all ad lib, and this character that I was just, formed itself and led each participant into the men's toilets, and just silently watched as they looked more and more horrified and bewildered as I took their hands to the tap and washed their hands for them, and just then handed them over to Professor Kurtz. And then I was in a prime position to see them as they came out, and it was more or less everybody's face was pleased, and you could tell they'd been through an experience and they were all quite well for it. So that was nice. I was in a better position than most people who were working in Cerebellium, because they were either in the dark or stuck in a room where they only saw people as they came through. So I did get to have a wider view.
Okay, Kevin, I'll try again, and I'll look this way as if I'm answering your questions. And didn't look like I was being interviewed there, so I'll try again. Okay, so what was the best thing about Cerebellium? For me, the best thing was being able to engage in this topic, which I've been interested in a long time. Actually, my interest in it partially comes from doing this work in theatre. I've been doing sensory labyrinth theatre for 12 years now, And the effect on the audience can be quite profound, consciousness raising or changing, and I was quite concerned about that, so I did study psychology just to be able to understand some of the aspects, in particular the mindfulness that comes about through walking around a labyrinth in the dark, and how that brought about this sense of elation and peace in people, and I was quite interested to know why that happened. So being able to engage directly with the topic of consciousness, and in particular the illusions that we have, was really interesting. That was the best thing.
The best thing I experienced in Cerebellium is Cerebellium. It's the good answer.
Needing a pee on the first night for about 5 hours, sitting next to a dripping tap.
It did get a bit tiresome at some points in the performance, like especially when there were big gaps between people, or when you start counting people and you're like, oh god, there's still like 20 left, like 3 hours left of this, but after a while it did get better, so yeah, it wasn't that bad.
The worst thing, sitting in my dark little room, waiting for people to come into the room. I did crunches and I did sit-ups and pranced around the room for a bit, you know, just to have a little stretch out. Yeah, so that was the time filler.
The worst thing was when people didn't take the experiment in my room. They couldn't take it because they were getting dizzy. So it was too bad, because they couldn't experience this solution.
I just due to the working hours, I handed in an assignment that got graded B+, so that's the worst thing.
I'll pause the tape because I can't think of anything. What could I say? What's the worst thing? Ooh, don't know. I've gone blank. I suppose I did feel for all the people that were that were stuck, you know, for hours on end in the dark, and you know, in the dark in every sense of the word, because I was the person that knew, you know, when we started and, you know, when the last person had gone through, and it must have been quite difficult for other people to endure 3 hours of not knowing how many more were to come and so on. I can't think of anything that yeah, no, I can't think of anything for myself.
Well, the worst thing maybe was that actually, despite doing something quite significant, you know, bringing art and science together, there wasn't that much interest from the press, and it's something I think we come across often in Wales. You know, the press actually couldn't be bothered to come to an evening performance. We had to try and do it in the afternoon, and I think there's a really, you know, serious lack of interest in theatre and culture in Wales, compared to sports, for instance, and especially theatre that's not coming from the main stables like the National Theatre of Wales, who have a huge marketing budget probably, you know, and rightly so. So yeah, it's that kind of lack of interest. It makes you feel like it's a flash in the pan, but you know, hopefully it won't be. So that, you know, you're working so hard on something, and great, the audience love it, that's really great. And then what, you know?
Cerebellium.
The funniest thing. Oh, I might have to come back to that one, because I know there was something really funny that happened, but I don't know if I can say it without laughing. Do you want to go first?
I'll go first. It was probably the lady that decided to crawl into my room because she thought she had to crawl around the whole sort of area, and I had to try and nicely tell her to stand up. So that was was quite funny.
Oh, this is so embarrassing to try and say out loud. Okay, the cover on my funnel was, for a time, a condom for want of finding anything better, and a particular lady who came round, when I sat her down in a chair and put her hand on the funnel nearest her, sort of grabbed it and wrenched it, so she broke the mechanism holding it on the wall, but because I was sat the other side, the balloon, like the condom, sort of popped as well. And I went, ooh! And yeah, I was just a bit stunned, and then I had to go and tell Will that the condom had broke, which was the only time I think I'll ever say that and giggle in my whole life, or hear anyone else giggle about that as a conversation. But yeah, that was quite mortifying actually.
The funniest thing. Well, for my station there were quite a few people who thought that the UV light was showing the germs on their hands, so they really thought that, like, you know, they had horribly dirty hands or something, and they were like, oh god, like, am I ruining Cerebellium? How and they were like checking their hands so many times. So that was kind of funny, and I really just wanted to tell them that it wasn't anything to worry about.
Funniest thing. Watching people's expressions on the other side of the mirror before they actually realised it was a one-way mirror, and watching them pulling stupid faces and picking their teeth. Yeah, that would be, I think that would be the funniest moments.
The funniest thing, it was when they asked me irrelevant questions, like where are you from? Are you from Belgium? Or stuff like that. Because I didn't know what to answer, and you know, it was very funny. Like they were trying to get me off from my role. And also, I wanted to add for the funniest thing that it was when Kevin, my colleague, he sat on this chair, and I said to him, focus on this face and imagine this is Kevin's face. It was the most funniest thing as well, because Kevin was that person, and I was saying to him, like, imagine this is Kevin's face, but this is Kevin. So this was the funniest thing as well.
Oh, I hear lots of people talking, so there's quite a few funny things. But I don't know if my humour kind of matches with other people. So I don't want to give away what people said. I hear lots of things and I just have to stop myself from laughing. Mainly by looking away towards the door, and it's like, yep, I'm not laughing at all.
I want to giggle right now and I have no idea why. Actually, the whole thing was highly amusing. And I had some really interesting times with Dr. Evans, who was Yuan downstairs in the waiting room. I'd take people from there upstairs, and then once I'd processed them, I handed them over to Professor Kurtz, and in that time I had very funny interactions with both of those characters, and quite often you never knew what was going to be said next, and those things were so ad lib and organic that they were great fun. I've just thought of a funny story. Well, after I washed people's hands, I took them back outside Professor Kurtz's office and I asked them to remove their shoes, but twice I asked men to remove their clothes. And the first time I didn't even notice I'd done it, and this guy just looked up at me from the chair in an amused way and said, "So you want me to take my shoes off?" I think the cue was that there were other shoes around the chair. And I said, "Oh, did I ask you to take your clothes off? I'm terribly sorry." The second time I did it, Professor Kurtz was within hearing, and he said, "Nurse," because he called me nurse for some reason, and he said, We've told you about that before. You've been warned about that before. So those were really funny moments. Honestly, I don't know where that came from. Although we have had a few discussions about. I can't remember that. It's a psychological phenomenon where people who have had their corpus callosum separated, so the two hemispheres of their brain are separated, and they are actually capable of doing things with one hand that they don't realise they're doing. It's like a wandering hand syndrome, and people have been known to undo the doctor's shirts while they're saying, "I'm terribly sorry, I've got no control over this." So this was Guillaume put this forward as a similar condition where my mouth runs off with. I really don't know. No comment. But it was funny anyway.
Funniest thing. One of the funniest things, which I hadn't mentioned before, is that there was this one illusion which Guillaume was very keen on, which was that the audience at one point would have their hands washed and a lotion was given to them, and this lotion had, I think, phosphagen in it. No, that's tomato fertilizer, isn't it? I can't remember. Phosphagen. Phosphorus. No, that would burn you. I can't remember what it's called, but some stuff, okay? And then later on they do a puzzle under an UV light, and then your hands glow under this UV light apparently. And Guillaume every time was going, "Wow, look at that, it's fantastic." And I didn't get it at all. I saw some little, a little glowing, but nothing fantastic. And I thought I could have tried to humour him, saying, "Oh yeah, okay." But I really, for a month I didn't understand what this illusion was about. And then I realised, just talking with Mae, because Mae was saying, "Oh, like, you've got some on your sleeve," and I said, "Oh no, there's nothing there." And she's saying, "There's loads there." And then I realised that I've had an intraocular lens replacement, and I didn't know, but I assume actually that it reduces UV by about 80% to my retina. So I was disabled from seeing this illusion to its full extent, at least, and I was kind of disappointed about that. But it was really funny that, actually Guillaume was right all along, and I was just faking it, and but there was an effect there. Also, as I said, Sam's laugh after every performance when we meet in the waiting room at the end, and had a debrief, and there's always something funny, and she'd crack up crying with laughter, and it would set us all off. One of them was my favourite, Hanji, reading the report, the book that people sign things in, and he said, "I enjoyed the dork," and he was trying to guess who the dork was, but it was actually dark. I enjoyed the dark. That was funny.
I wonder, perhaps you could imagine what the response would be.
The way time changed, time stretched and shrunk. It didn't really seem to have any relevance anymore. I think when you start to do a labyrinth, as soon as the first person enters, it just takes on its own magic, and it's almost like being in another world. So yeah, time doesn't apply.
And what has Cerebellium made you think about?
It's made me think about communication and how so much of the way we communicate is non-verbal and it's non-visual. that if we're open to experiences and shared experiences with other people, then there is this magic that occurs.
I'll go first. The strangest one for me was when somebody placed their hand on the table and were convinced that they couldn't lift it up or move it. So it was sort of bizarre. It was like they were sort of under hypnosis of some sort because they just couldn't move it. It was quite scary, but probably the thing I've sort of learnt from the most. And yeah, interesting.
I think the strangest thing was towards the end of the week, being able to actually tell when someone was coming, you know, in the pitch black, and I got to a point where I was just quite happy, didn't feel like I needed to use the UV light at all, but I felt I should keep it in just for the audience member, really, just so as not to terrify them with a hand grabbing them in the dark. But that was quite strange, but in a nice way, sort of starting to get that sense of the whole thing and starting to get into a really nice rhythm with the whole space of telling where people were. That was lovely.
I agree with that as well, actually. Yeah, it's the more it went on, the more comfortable you felt with your experience, and I think the easier it came to sort of be at one with the environment in a weird sort of way. So yeah,
and less panic when people, you know, sometimes when people came quite close together initially, it seemed quite worrying and sort of on edge about, oh, are they going to get to do everything, or is this person going to get in their way? But you sort of end up working out what you can do to prolong it without it seeming fake.
No, not too many strange things, but like the same thing as before, but there was this woman who was really extreme, and she was like, she really thought they were germs, and she was like, and I was telling her, don't worry, and she was like, are you a GP? I was like, no, but don't worry about it. I'm going to see a GP tomorrow. So yeah, I was actually quite worried about her. Yeah, but so that was the strangest thing.
Strangest thing. Well, I don't really know what the strangest thing was. The whole thing was quite strange. I guess listening to different heartbeats. You don't get to do that every day. Listening to different heartbeats, yeah. And you got the soft ones, you got the strong ones, and you got the non-existent ones. The ones who are sort of alive and aren't really alive.
The most energetic thing was when they're trying to play battleships with the candles, but that's not strange because in normal situations, especially if they're drunk, people will try and play battleship with the candles, but it's strange in the context that people usually try to calm down and just drink their tea and talk about the things instead of playing battleships. People was like talking about it as if the technology does exist, but like there's people trying to say no, it doesn't. There's like, but what if it is? And stuff like that. And people say, no, there isn't.
The strangest thing, it's the effect that this mask had to people.
I mean, it was what other people experienced, like the naked woman in Guillaume's car, and the phone call he got from Kevin. Directly, though, nothing happened to me that was strange. It was quite weird when people were coming through, the participants, the audience were coming through, and I know them. I knew quite a few of them. But I was in a character, so I had to just be this character. And it was quite strange how powerful it was, because especially people who didn't know me, they were quite afraid almost of my stern character, and I felt quite powerful and manipulative. I could feel how much power I had over people, just sort of submitting to having their hands washed, and you know, this kind of authoritative person. Authoritarian is the right word, really.
Strangest thing. like I said, Guillaume probably would have told you about his strange synchronicity episode, and it happens quite often in Labyrinth, this kind of synchronicity aspect. And it's very strange how that should happen, but it does. And yes, I think the strangest thing for me was the fact that in the waiting room where I was working as Dr. Gareth Evans, talking with the audience before they went into to meet Professor Kurtz and into the laboratory, I installed some jars on a shelf, on shelves, and in the jars were some suspended, I don't know if that's what you say, or pickled animals. You know, there were squids, and there was a monkey, a very cute little monkey who died obviously a long time ago and was in alcohol up to here, and his little hands were like this. And you know, there was they were obscured slightly by this two-way mirror. You'd have to look quite carefully to look at them and to see them. But I was really surprised that nobody had the curiosity to peer and to look behind that, although maybe there was some level of liminal awareness that there was something there. Because I also opened a little cupboard and there was a kangaroo in a jar there, a kangaroo fetus, I think it was a kangaroo. And you know, when I opened the cupboard and took out the file and closed it, you know, some people got an eyeful of this, and many people didn't say anything. So you know, it's interesting because you can't get feedback on the subliminal cueing that we were doing in there. You can't get that kind of. You can't get feedback on that kind of subtext that you're creating. Yeah. The other very interesting and strange thing for me was how people fell for the story immediately. They fell for the hypothetical question. And okay, so that's not so strange in one sense, because it was quite gripping and engaged people's intellect and what they thought about this dilemma. What was even very strange for me is how some members of the public, not many, felt responsible for other people in the small group and would insist that I would tell them that it was theatre, that it wasn't real, that it was totally hypothetical. And you know, they'd bought tickets for a theatre event, they'd put the tickets in the box office, they'd come up, and I just found it very strange that people would want to try and inhibit people from going on this journey, allowing them like children to believe in something. And that was fascinating.
Well, guess what? Cerebellium. I'll keep to my word. It's an easy script.
The story of the brain. Bizarre.
That's it, just bizarre.
Yeah.
Accurate.
It's just because you know it's theatre and you know you're putting on a performance, but even then you start thinking, what if this was real? And how would you try and explain and justify it? So the ethical question, I think it was a really strong angle to come from for giving the audience this very specific role within the performance, and getting them to challenge their own sort of moral values, really, for you know, not just for Kevin, the Project K, but for their own, if it was them. And as much as, you know, they're told not to put themselves in his shoes, you can't help but think, what if that was me, really, or someone that I knew?
I think the narrative was very clever, but I think, yeah, as Terry was saying, it's just the real life implications that it can have for some people. I mean, the story can apply to anything from euthanasia to rights of fetuses and all sorts of other things. So I think, yeah, to be part of something that can have that sort of rewarding and external influence as well, other than just being a performance. It's really cool.
Yeah, just a great way to show the illusions as well, because the audience doesn't, you know, they're told that these are illusions, that it's just how they perceive the world through their own brain, but all the time you don't quite know how it's being done, so it does still kind of retain its magic at the same time, and that was really clever and quite hard to achieve, but I think it was achieved and achieved really well.
I agree.
Storyline was great and really, really good. Yeah, I think it was really effective. I've spoken to a few people who came through and they found it really, really interesting, and it really kind of made them question their sense of reality and what is illusion and what isn't.
Yeah, I definitely never really thought about it that much before, but I think it is actually quite linked to some future considerations that might come about, you know, with things like artificial intelligence or bionic limbs, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely the whole experience made me think more about it. Brain in the vat philosophy. I'm not sure, even after all this time I still haven't actually decided between the 3 choices that we gave all the participants. I'm still not really sure that any of them was the correct choice in the end, so I don't know, I still haven't really decided yet actually.
Obviously true. Somewhere in the deep dark dungeon in Bangor University there actually is a brain with a personality. God, this room really is spinning. Yes, so I honestly do believe that it is true, and it may have just been adapted a bit, so...
It was quite good, I think, and original. The whole thing was very original for me. I haven't seen or experienced something similar before. I think it was quite good, brilliant.
I like the new kind of the background to it, because before it was just not as interlinked as some people showing experiments and stuff like that, and rather than having a theme altogether apart from being a psychology experiments and some psychology students. So I like that dimension and stuff like that.
At first I thought far-fetched. But close to real life and relevance because of, you know, so many ethical considerations in the medical profession now that we've got such technology to keep people alive, etc. However, it was amazing how seriously people went for it. It was brilliant. It was an absolute stroke of brilliance, that story. It really tipped off the whole concept of cerebellium into another dimension. So it had the kind of personal dimension of we can't trust everything we feel and see and think. But to bring it into that whole paradigm of ethical considerations was just a genius.
What do I think about the brain in the vat philosophy? When I think about it, my brain hurts. But that could just be the scientists prodding it. No, I think the brain in the vat theory, well, it's a thought experiment, isn't it? I think it was, I can't remember the name of the psychologist or philosopher who thought of it, but it's a kind of science fiction scenario, and that's something that you have to get over to actually make the most of it. And I think we did that in this play. I think we did it through creating this personality, Kevin, after your name, and got the audience to identify with him. And that had its problems as well, but we got them to, you know, I hope we got them to inquire quite deeply into this concept of, are we really seeing reality, or is it delusion, and if it was a delusion, would I want to know? The thought in the vat, the brain in the vat is about theory of mind, and it's a kind of modern equivalent of Plato's cave, where Plato said in the Republic that, you know, we are like people in a cave, chained, unable to turn our heads, so we only have access to the shadows of objects, and are unable to see the actual object or the source of light that's projecting them. And in the same way, you know, how can we prove we're not a brain in a vat? Because all we have access to is the what our brain tells us, which could be a simulation. I think that's roughly what it's about. And I think it's useful, but I take quite seriously Ramana's saying that, you know, if you go the way of thought, you enter a maze in which you will never come out. And I think thought is very limited, and that's why I work in theatre, and especially immersive theatre, because when you put people in a situation, when they're immersed in a situation with all the senses, it engages in another kind of intelligence, and in fact, you know, I purposely try and distract the intellect to allow this other intelligence to emerge, and it's an intelligence that gives a kind of insight which brings about change in consciousness. You know, Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the consciousness that created it, or the level of thought that created it, and what I try and do is to allow us to confront situations with a different level of thought or consciousness, and to some extent I hope that worked here.
Tricky one.
Yeah. Oh goodness, that's quite a lot in one question. Okay. The music was really effective where I was, because the audience were moving from the tunnels into this little cocoon space. So it almost kind of sounded like an amplified speaker, but as soon as I kind of stepped out, I knew it was this real thing, and I think people were really moved by it, and they seemed to come out from that section a lot less freaked out than you might expect when you've asked them to crawl, and I think it's the effect of the music really, and the power of that really, and as a sense that it's something we often take for granted, but when you just sort of hear it like that, I think it's really strong, particularly when you can't see very well or at all, and then I think just having that glimpse sort of through the blackness, and just seeing a glimpse of Kevin playing the piano was really powerful for a lot of people.
As they say, when one sense is cut off, like your eyesight, the other senses are sort of amplified. So I think that music just added another sort of dimension to that. It's beautiful from where I was standing. I think classical music has a special sort of emotional thing anyway. I think it can be affect your mood quite a lot and make people a bit more relaxed. As of the time question, I think time in here went scarily fast anyway. I mean, we lost track of time quite a lot, and some of the evenings just seemed to fly by, so whether that was through enjoyment or something else, I'm not sure.
And you're determined, you think you can keep up and count and remember exactly who's been through, but very quickly you start to forget and can't quite remember, and sometimes you seem to have been sat for a long time, and maybe it was only a couple of minutes, but it was nice because I basically spent most of the week without time, not having a watch or any device to know, and I was given the concept of time that people were coming through at 5-minute intervals, but when you have that sort of the watch removed and you can't time it, it's quite confusing, but in quite a nice, pleasant way as well.
Did you make your lectures on time?
I did actually. I was still on time though the next day, which was good. I had an alarm clock to wake me up, so it's fine. Cheating slightly.
I let quite a few get away by cheating, because they got like really excited and like they really were like really proud that they solved it, even though they cheated. So I was just like, okay, you solved it. Like the trick, you know, just putting that here. Maybe only about 4 or 5 got that, so I'm quite proud of myself. Yeah, most people got really irritated with it though, so yeah.
I was lying in the darkness. People would come towards me in the dark, crawling on all fours, following a rope which was tied around my foot. It was pitch black, so they would just be following this rope in the darkness, and then they'd come across the foot. And then they then had the option of how they wanted it to develop. They could either follow my foot up to my leg and find my hand, or they could just sit and wait for me to take the lead. And then depending on what happened, I would then take their hand and stroke my face with their hand, stand up and then lead them through to where Kevin was playing piano, and stand with them while he played for them, and then send them on their way. Yeah, very much so.
We'd like several more. More strange and more real than the last.
It's going bigger from here, isn't it?
Yeah. It was just all week I kept bumping into people, and they'd ask me what I was doing this week, or had a conversation with people, and they were just like, how did I miss it, and when's the next one, and can I get a ticket? And, yeah, I think we could have carried on for considerably longer if it wasn't our own physical exertion that limited it, really.
Because it's just been so much more than just 1 week's work, isn't it? It's been something we built up from October, so I guess it seems a bigger thing because you spent more time on it, and yeah, it seems to have taken over our lives for quite a long time, so it's sad that it's over, so looking forward to the next.
Don't forget me. Please call me back. Yes, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I'll definitely be here next year. Same thing. Okay.
Yes and no. No, because I wouldn't be here for it. I'll be lazing somewhere in a beach, by a beach even. I'll be lazing somewhere by a beach. But no, if Cerebellium 2 were ever to be staged in Martinique, I'll be there.
Yeah, definitely. I miss the whole thing here, and we had a lot of funny and pressure and stressed moments. But this made us have a wonderful experience, which I don't think anyone is going to forget. And I look forward to Cerebellium 2 and experience something like that again.
Project. What has made me think about it? It has made me. Oh, this room is spinning. It has made me think about how people get so easily drawn in to this obviously non-fiction narrative. Yeah, they get so easily drawn in, and it's nice when, I mean, it's a good feeling at the end when you know, I particularly get to witness them think really hard about their decisions. It's it feels like we've done something right.
What did I think we would be doing? I'm not sure. I definitely didn't think it would be sort of as big a scale as it is now, because I was thinking, you know, there are only that many of us, so I didn't really think we could achieve as much as we have. And yeah, and I think I was actually a bit skeptical about the different illusions when we were first discussing it, like the sodium room especially. I was thinking, okay, there's no way it'll be, you know, black and white, but that's exactly what it is. So yeah, that was really amazing for me, and that most of our illusions all worked out as planned. That was pretty amazing.
I didn't have any idea how it's going to be the whole thing and what they wanted to create. But I think when we were close to the end and we were almost done, it made sense more what it was going to be like.
The thing is, when I applied for Cerebellium, I thought it's a museum of illusions, which they're building right now and I'm not part of. And so it wasn't what I expected. But what I gathered from it, and what they seem to think, and not really, was that I think people's mind would be quite screwed over by it and think, oh my god, what's going on? And I think they was aiming for something more, I guess, make them a bit more speechless and a bit more like quiet conversation rather than oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And it did happen that way.
Well, I actually came in quite late to the project. I avoided all the building, thank God. So I didn't have to do any manual labour. No, I'm joking. No, I did come in slightly later in the project, but my expectations and the end result, I mean, they weren't that much different actually. I already sort of knew what labyrinth theatre was to begin with, so I had a sort of a particular expectation of the end result, and it matched more or less.
It made me think about the coming, or it's happening already, kind of revolution in science, in our knowledge of consciousness and the brain, and how that's going to affect things, or is already. You know, we've had the revolution, the industrial revolution, the biotechnology revolution, the information revolution. Now this one is information about ourselves, you know, and our fallibility, our vulnerability to illusion, and it made me think how important it is that we have funding and maybe a curriculum in education, a kind of neuropedagogy to prepare people, to immunize them to the vulnerabilities that they have, their cognitive illusions, their optical illusions, their sensory illusions, because as in the previous you know, maybe not so much the information revolution, I don't know, but previous revolutions have been monopolized by a very small percentage, the 1%, the famous 1%. And my fear is they will get hold of this information and turn us into kind of consumer zombies, you know, and it sounds quite incredible and science fiction-like, but the possibility is there, you know, with neuromarketing, with, you know, we can be manipulated, as I was trying to do in the waiting room with these subliminal suggestions, you know. But it's happening all the time, you know, you pass a subway and the smell of the bread is very attractive. You know, it's been happening since the 1920s, you know, with Freud's cousin, Edward Bernays, and now, you know, they've really tooled up these neuromarketeers, and I'm just worried that we're going to be slaves, held quick by our subconscious desires, and maybe the appearance of being free, when indeed that is not what we are. That's the saddest thing, isn't it? A slave that thinks they're free because they don't fight.
Loads. Altogether, how many packs of cookies I gave up for Cerebellium? At least 5, I think. there's also some cookies that wasn't mine that we ate. Those tubes of digestive that are not digestive things. Have tarts as well, like those little custard tarts. More than 100. You mean like for all the like clients and all that stuff? Well, each big box was 40, and I think we bought about 3 of those 40 ones. So that's like 120 already, and then we bought a few more packs, and then a few more, and a few more. So 300 bags, 300 little bags of tea. I didn't offer them cookies, but one of them did want cookies, and I was like, those are mine.
Okay, now let's just be more serious, perhaps, about these questions. Shall I just go back to the beginning? I think, right? So what is the best thing about Cerebellium? I think it's to see that the look of people when they come out to it. When I could get a glimpse of that, and I saw that they actually were surprised, you know, that something was sparkling in their eyes, and that they were thinking, wait a minute, this is not just another show, something's happened to me. When I could feel that, or can read that, or I get feedback, and that's what people think, I think it's amazing, really. That's the best thing for me. Yeah. Well, the single strange thing is probably when, that for sure that is what happened when some people came in here and had no conception whatsoever what theatre is. They would simply take everything first degree as if it was true, and they freaked out. I mean, they were panicked. One guy wanted to go, and he left. Another woman just couldn't understand what we were doing. Everything that she was looking at, everything. She stepped 3 steps away from this jar, thinking I was going perhaps to dip her head or into the pot or something. She was absolutely scared, and so at some point I had to do something that is kind of a sacred rule of theatre. You can't do that, but I had to do it. I just got to stop playing, essentially. When in one-to-one theatre, it's not too disastrous, I guess. So I told her, like, do you understand that this is theatre? And she went like, yeah, sort of. But then she didn't. You know, it was obvious, because every time I was starting my next line, she was freaking out again. You know, it was just unbearable, and I didn't know how to react, really. This was the most weird feeling I've ever had, because, you know, we were clearly in a theatre setup, but it's kind of powerful theatre, one-to-one theatre, so I think that's the reason why she was freaking out like this. Sure. I think my favorite moment is when I ask people to read letters, and on the screen, I couldn't do that all the way through, and they read them with their hand over their mouth, and when I tell them, you know, not very impressive. Just that line is amazing, because they just burst into laughter every time. It's kind of the perfect joke. There's a couple of other jokes that are quite good, but this is really good. And then I tell them, do you realize that I never asked you to read aloud? And that doubles the power of the laughter. So that was really funny, actually. Really enjoyed that line and that moment. Well, I hope we have managed. I mean, for me, this was the absolute fundamental thing, is to merge, to fuse the two. And I mean, I don't know if we succeeded. I probably will never know, but I have a feeling that this is well beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, you know, I didn't think that we would get something as perfect as this. I mean, first time. It's a mysterious thing. It was an adventure, but it got exactly where I would have dreamed to go. So I'm very happy about it. It's like a dream. It's exactly like a dream. You start off, you almost feel in control. You know, you have thoughts when you go to sleep, and you think, okay, it's going to stem all from there. And then from there on, you completely lose control. It's like it went completely. I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen in the end. So effectively, it's like this is the perfect object of my dreams, but I didn't feel in control. Things were just imposing themselves onto me. It just happened. You know, I didn't have really a choice. It wasn't planned from the beginning at all. course I am. But I can show you something. I think I'm so keen to experiment that it's going to be something completely and utterly different. I've got already some ideas on what we could be doing, and I look forward to discussing them with Ydy'r and all the team, and all the ones who want from the team who want to follow us. Actually, I'm going to have to do this again. I think I got a virus in the process. I'm pretty addicted on the first shot. Definitely. There were moments where I felt a little bit abandoned, because, I mean, you know, all this work has been done on based on voluntary work, including mine, and at some point, you know, I just felt quite lonely building, you know, rooms and installing bulbs on the on the ceiling and wiring things and breathing dust. I was wondering, you know, am I stupid? Am I just completely degenerated? Have I lost it? You know? But it never came across my mind to say, okay, I'm just going to close the door and bugger off. No, I wanted that too much. But I think, you know, the dreams come true. That's got no price. It's priceless. Oh my God, I can't give you the full list. It's just unbelievable. The number of bits of wood, paper, cardboard, wire that would just be fit for purpose to do exactly the right job in the right place at the right moment. It's mind-blowing. I should have kept track of this, but I don't do track record anyway. But I mean, you know, we would wander next door to find in the disused laboratory a piece of equipment, and every single time will come with the exact fit. It's just incredible. That happened, and I mean, I should say the most amazing coincidence of all is to have met Ydy'r one lunchtime at the noodle bar, the noodle restaurant in Bangor, because this was, it's like the perfect coincidence, the perfect encounter, if you want. I was waiting for Ydy'r, and perhaps I'm jumping the gun here, but I think he might have been waiting for me as well. And you yourself, Kevin, an encounter with someone who basically has a copy-paste sort of love for music with my own is kind of incredible. I mean, pretty much everything you like in music, I'm pretty sure I would come to love it very quickly. It's kind of interesting, I think, for a coincidence. It was definitely one's idea to actually, well, it wasn't, you know, we discussed this concept several times, but his idea to put it on the show and to have it there, visible, was definitely his idea, and I resisted that idea. I thought it was too crude, too direct, too not suggestive enough. But then after having 3 hours of a game playing and making it up on a Friday afternoon before the show started, and it just worked so well, I think, you know, it was a genius, a strike of genius, but I'm not the owner of that strike of genius. Naked girls. This is being recorded. Of course it is. Naked girls. What do you want me to tell about naked girls? They're kind of nice. I suppose the dream of anybody is to have a naked girl, you know, sort of like knock on the window of their car one night, and particularly if they're kind of appealing and beautiful, and ask them to climb aboard. Right? Except that there are circumstances in which you just wouldn't necessarily say yes. So, do you want me to tell the story? Is that what you want me to do? Okay. Well, it's quite simple. I was bringing Kevin back home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and after a very hard night of work in Cerebellium, seeing about 37 people go through every 5 minutes, and so on. So at 1 o'clock we had wrapped up the story and the evening, and I took him home and stepped out of the car, and at this exact moment, second for second, when he was picking up his backpack from the back seat of the car, this girl appears, entirely naked from head to toe. She just had a kind of scarf, very light scarf around her, that's all. And she was holding in her hands a necklace, and that's it. And she says to me through the aperture of the door, and I hope you will witness that this is true, she says, please let me come in the car and take me away immediately. I don't want to stay here, I've got to go, please let me come with you. That was the moment where Kevin was about to close the door of the car, the front door, and we looked at each other, Kevin and I, thinking, what's going on? You know, it's like a panic moment. And before I had time to answer the question actually that she was asking me, she actually was in the car between the two child seats, sitting there. And she said, please take me away. I will work for you until I die. I will do everything you want, but please take me away from here. And she was kind of shivering and worried and scared. Hello. At which point, Kevin looked at me in the eye and said, "Are you alright? Do you want me to stay?" And I said, "No, I think I'll be okay. I'll manage that." Sort of. And so he closed the door, went back home, and I was left with this girl, naked, in my car, in the middle of the street, at 1 o'clock in the morning, and not a clue what I should do about it. So it was, I mean, I was not panicked, but I was puzzled. I thought, I don't think this happened to me very often in a lifetime. And so well, do you want to know the rest of the story? Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to disclose what happened. It was quite simple. I basically called my wife after parking a bit further because I was blocking the street, who told me to call the police. Then I called the police, then the police came. 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, then an ambulance came with 2 people from the NHS who took a look at her. And, well, she was absolutely fine. She just, I don't know, we don't know what happened. She freaked out. She was not apparently on drugs. She just wanted to go, really. But she was probably under the effect of a kind of psychotic event. And at this point, I had to come out of my car and wait for her, for the resolution outside. And after about 25 minutes, because she wouldn't budge from the back of the car, the female police officer just took her physically out of my car and put her in the police car, and then I was allowed to go. And that whole operation lasted for 1.5 hours, which is kind of amazingly long, but it was needed, I guess. There was a moment where I was wondering if the police was going to ask me what I was doing at 1 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Bangor with a naked car in my girl, but a naked girl in my car. And they never asked. They actually asked what happened, but they never sort of trying to test me or anything. I suppose the situation was kind of self-explanatory and not to my, you know, was not putting me at risk of being dangerous or anything like that, because you know, she didn't want to come out of the car, first of all, and she didn't seem like she'd been attacked or anything, and she had my my coat around her to try and keep her warm, so it didn't look like I was being very dangerous or anything like that. But I mean, I suppose it was just too apparent. The thing that helped a lot is that the police actually found where she was coming from, and that she was having a psychotic event, probably. That's it. Answers your question? Well, I hate telephones, if you want me to tell you about telephones. I hate them with a passion. I've always hated them. I hate them ever since I had my first romantic drama with a girl when I was about 14, and I've hated them ever since, particularly in relation to girlfriends, but also to family, to friends, to pretty much everybody. Because the problem is they don't convey what you want to say. The most important thing you can convey to another individual is your presence. It's the sound of your voice, but the real one. Your face, but not just an image of your face, your real face. And more importantly, the contact, the touch, you know. And all that stuff is not accessible in a phone conversation, and it's the problem. It's basically the driest, most horrible thing. It's like the opposite of suggestion. You experience something incredibly strong and extremely frustrating because you can't really communicate what you want to communicate at the same time. You have the impression the other is here. So I hate telephones. Was that a question you were asking? Okay, I can see it with a smile on your face that it wasn't the question you were asking, but I just wanted you to know what I thought about telephones in the first place. Anyway, mobile phones are no exception, and actually they're even worse, because generally the communication line is even worse, so actually they are the worst kind of telephone that exists. Also, they are this device that you can buy, you can call anyone with at any time. You would think that's an advantage, but actually that's the worst thing in the world, because you can call anyone at any time, anywhere they are. So if they're not in the right context, you can call them. You can call them in the toilet, you can call them in the middle of a play, you can call them in the middle of a meeting, you can call them in the middle of a moment of ecstasy, meditation, contemplation, listening to music, and all this is very wrong. You should never call them in these moments. Anyway, that's what it is. So I also hate mobile phones. Anyway, I can't deny the fact that they're quite practical, quite handy. Like this night, on the very last time we staged Cerebellium for internal, for us, for ourselves, we got everybody to go through Cerebellium, and it was fabulous night where we could actually experience, all of us, the thing we'd created, because we didn't know we were playing in this show, and no one had actually experienced the whole thing, so we didn't know what it was like. So this was our chance to all experience it. So I go through like everybody else, and we had a particular logistical plan for everyone to be able to see everything and pause where they were in their role until they would go through. And then I come to this room, the sodium lab room, which is next to the lab. And I have to call the restaurant because we had ordered, we had reserved a table, and we couldn't be there in time because of the delay. We were an hour and a half late. So I called them and I said, well, we're going to be late, and actually we're not going to come at all. Can you please prepare some takeaways for us? Fine. Went back to the lab, and at this very minute where I was going to call Devan Roberts, something happened that to this day I cannot explain, and which is a bit worrying, really. I don't know if it's worrying or if it's quite marvelous, but in any case it's something that should never happen. So now that you're probably familiar with the Cerebellium story and everything that's happening there, so I come in that room, stay there, give a phone call, and because I'm staying there for a while, other people start arriving behind me. Other people, I don't remember exactly who, but I think Mae was there, I don't know if Kirsty was there, I don't know if Abigail was there, I don't know, 3 or 4 people arrive, and so there's a bit of a pack there. So I go to the next room, the lab, where K, the organ K, is in its aquarium, bubbling away. And at the moment where I prepare myself to call Devan, I receive a phone call on my mobile. Normally I ignore phone calls on my mobile, or because in my pocket it's on vibration mode always. I never put the ringer on, so I essentially miss calls. And this time I had the mobile in my hand, so I couldn't possibly miss the fact that I was being called. And so I look who's calling, and it says Kevin. So for a moment I had a bit of a small smile on my face and thinking, it's fun, I'm in the laboratory where K is bubbling away in an aquarium and I receive a call from Kevin. You know, it's kind of fun. But immediately it occurred to me that Kevin was in the door, in the room just next door. What the hell was Kevin doing, calling me on his mobile when he was like 5 meters away from me? So I called him. I actually didn't have to call him, because at the moment I was calling him, at this exact second he walked in the doorway. He was getting prepared to speak to himself, you see. The idea was, he was in Cerebellium, visiting it for the first time of his life and the week, and he was just about to press a few keys on the computer that allows him, well, that was supposed to allow him in Cerebellium to communicate with K, the organ, whose incarnation in real life is Kevin. That is him. Well, that's our inspiration of the person who was projected into K's brain as being himself. I hope you follow this reasoning. It's kind of simple, really, when you're used to it. You just need a 1 week practice, intense practice to get it. Anyway, so he prepares himself to speak to himself virtually in a simulated context. It's actually virtually, if I'm correct, to the power of 3, because he was virtually going to talk to himself. I don't think he ever did, but anyway, he was about to press the button. Of course, he was speaking on a virtual system that we'd installed that never connected to K in any way or form, so it was virtual in that sense as well. But it was virtual as well because he was going to talk to himself on a virtual system that accesses the virtual him, because he was the inspiration behind the brain. I don't know if you follow this, but it's kind of as far as we can conceive of remote possibilities. At this point, I put my hand on his shoulder and I say, Kevin, somebody's calling me on my mobile, look. And he saw Kevin. I said, well, I'm not calling you, sorry. I said, where's your mobile? I don't know. Okay, well, find it now, because I want to know where your mobile is. So he looked in his pockets, and if it was acting, it was really good acting, because he couldn't find it anywhere, and he just didn't know where he was. So his backpack was on his back, so he opened his backpack, emptied the whole content on the floor, piece by piece, and when he reached the bottom of the pack, he got to his mobile phone, which was on in a conversation with me. So we put the mobile phones next to one another, and they were having a little chat, the two of them. And then I asked Kevin, can you just explain to me how the fuck did you manage to call me on your mobile without touching it? That is, while it was in the bottom of your backpack. At the exact moment when I was in the lab and you were in the lab, just about to speak to Kevin, in your first visit of Cerebellium and mine, given that it should have never been the case that we would have been in that room at the same time. I was only there because it got delayed because I was calling the restaurant. So we tried to figure out how this was possible, and given the look in his eyes, I was thinking, well, pretty unlikely it was staged. If it was, it's kind of really good and really escapes my understanding. He had no idea what was going on, and he was kind of puzzled and still trying to figure out how these things were possible, if they were actually a coincidence, if they were not, and so on. But the point is that they could not be a coincidence, because it's impossible. So the comparison I used at that point, and I think it's still valid probably, is, it's like we can calculate the probabilities of particles to meet, for example, in the real world. It's done quite a lot in physics. So if you put gas in a container, you can compute the probability of two molecules bumping into one another. It's quite high, actually, because of course, depending on the temperature and the amount of molecules in there, chances are they're going to bump into each other. The probability of 3 bumping into each other is very low. Unsurprisingly, you have to have three exactly coincident movements happening. The probability of 4 molecules bumping into one another is probably close to 0. And the probability of 5 bumping into one another is out of this world. It just is 0. It won't happen. Even if it's physically plausible, it will just not happen. In 20 million lifetimes of people watching a container full of gas, it won't happen. So can someone explain to me how a degree 5 coincidence happened to us that night? I'm interested. Any response? Get in touch.
So, in a world where nothing is as it seems, what do you think is important? Okay, I'm going to just nod like this as if I'm listening to your question. What's important in a world where nothing appears as it seems? Okay, I got some insight into this because I was talking with the audience in groups of 5 for half an hour, some of them having to maintain this hypothetical situation and pretending I was a doctor of philosophy, which was very difficult with these several friends of Guillaume, you know, professors of neuroscience and psychology were coming in and questioning me, so I was able, I think, to develop a kind of logic to what I was saying. And I was doing that over again, like 5 times a night, no, 6 times a night. And what was really interesting is how they more or less, you know, half a group, maybe less than half, would want to know and would want Kevin to know, by extension, that this world is a delusion, it's a kind of fiction, if that was so, and if it could be shown to them in a way that they could believe. And while the half, a little bit more than the half, wouldn't want to know, they would prefer to live in this fiction. And I fall on, you know, well, I don't know if I fall into the group that believes that, you know, they would like to know about it, because I don't know if we can. I don't think the ego can grasp the illusion, because it is an illusion itself. And yet, you know, I was surprised at the lack of curiosity, the attachment people had to the appearance of a meaning, when, you know, so there was, people felt, you know, somehow that with the question they felt there was a, you know, they didn't want to know, and yet part of them knew already. So how can you be so attached to something that means that is meaning something which is an illusion? You know, for me it's about, it could be about nationhood or belief in ideas, a strong attachment to a way of thinking, which gives us an identity, which gives us meaning, you know, and this is a source of conflict in the world. So I think for me what's important is actually to not be afraid, not what I think was important, or is important in such a situation is not to be afraid. You know, that's what I felt, is that not to you know, we're hanging on to this lifeline, drowning in a sea of uncertainty, and what would it be to let go? People assume if we let go and just allow ourselves to be drowned in this uncertainty, then you know, all meaning will stop, nothing will mean anything. And I think the opposite. I think everything will be talking to us. Every meaning will flow from everything around us, rather than just from a few selected aspects of our reality. And I think that could be wonderful, if it was somehow, if we were enlightened to this illusion. And I don't know, I use the word illusion, but I think it's not correct, because illusion assumes there's a reality, and I would say there isn't a reality, there isn't a bedrock, you know, it's all moving, it's all changing, it's all dancing. The show is all dancing, and we can just enjoy it, maybe. When you started the project, what did you imagine it would be like? Well, it started when I met Guillaume, brought together with Guillaume by Dylan Roberts from Pontio, and I'm very grateful that he did that. Dylan's seen some of my work and likes it, and thought that I was the right person for Guillaume to realize his dreams, to not create a kind of exhibition of illusions, but something a bit more immersive. What I expected really came from meeting Guillaume, really, which was, you know, he's a brilliant professor, very popular, connected with his inner child, if you like, and I thought it would be fun and interesting and fascinating, and it was all of that, and I imagine maybe that's what it was like a little to work with people like Richard Feynman, you know, because a lot of academics are a bit stuffy and precious about their subject, you know, because I probably mauled his subject in some aspects, you know, especially the brain in a vat, you know, which is a bit kind of cliche in science fiction. So, you know, it was great, really super. the brain in the vat story worked so well? Is it just that? Okay, so the brain in the vat story, where did it come from? Well, it came very quickly when it came, but you know, like when you call a plumber and they come in and they fix something in 20 minutes, and 10 minutes, and they charge you a lot of money for it, and they say, well, yeah, but you know, I've been working for 30 years to be able to do that. And in a way, it's similar in that you know, I circled this scenario for a long time, reading about consciousness, understanding what the capacity of the group we had were, looking at the resources, looking at the site, because it was site specific, and just letting them all mix in my subconscious. And then up came this brain in the vat, and everything kind of fell into place like a jigsaw. And it came like, you know, I wrote the script in a couple of hours. And there was, of course, you know, there was flexibility in that because it wasn't a group of actors, and also, you know, Guillaume was slightly resistant in the beginning to the brain in the vat idea because it was a bit science fiction-y and cliched, and maybe, you know, Guillaume has more sensitivity around the human brain, being in contact with them lots of the time. And not in a fictional sense. So, but he overcame his resistance, and we built the brain from the machine around it and everything from, you know, scraps, and he loved that. It was great fun. And it worked as a complete piece, but I think, you know, this engagement with the ethical dilemma engaged an aspect of the audience which usually in immersive theatre I try and kind of subdue, which is kind of their intellectual opinion, you know. And what we try and do is try to release the intellect from the demand to create a narrative, and just to enjoy the moment and the senses, and then afterwards people create the narrative. But so this was a little bit different, and but I think, you know, I don't know if we got the balance right. The ethical thing really pulled people in very deeply into that, thinking about the problem rather than just enjoying the illusions. And well, I don't know. It's difficult to tell in this aspect, but it was good. I think it was quite good theatre and a good story, an interesting scenario. And yes, totally fantastic. You know, Guillaume told me that this is impossible and would be for many centuries, but people fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and that was interesting. Do I have anything else I would like to talk about? Just that it was a great group to work with, very enjoyable. And maybe this subject of neuropedagogy, I'm very, very keen to actually lobby the Welsh Government to develop a curriculum that can be delivered from primary school, nursery maybe, yeah, why not? Nursery school to university level and beyond, which will help people to recognize this vulnerability in the brain to cognitive and perceptive illusions, or illusions of perception, so that they can be aware in some extent, hopefully, to the manipulation that is now becoming available, the capacity for manipulation that's becoming available to people who don't have our best interest in mind. They have profit in mind and power and hegemony, and I really think we need to tool up against this oppression, and we need to do it quickly. It's my warning.
blue balloon. Not so blue balloon. Blue again, balloon. Blue. Squid's eyes are actually quite human looking. Look. And compared to Kevin's eyes. And squids are usually quite white. And look how white it is. Fascinating.
It really provoked a lot of thought in me, like how would I feel literally if all I was a brain being stimulated by scientists. However, I still stuck to my guns and chose to tell Kevin because essentially the only difference between him and I is that I am constructing my reality and yet his is manipulated by others, which is unfair. Potentially we are not so different if you believe that there is a God, because that means that God is essentially constructing our reality, a bit like a scientist. Before I believe in free will, but now that it's getting incredibly philosophical. Anyway, thank you so much.
Not bad. She took the trouble in writing this.
Yeah, it's very nice.
What do you think, Will?
Yeah, that's
Any
good.
Comments?
Not at the moment, no.
How about you, Joanna? My God, she's smart today. Look at this. She looks absolutely $1 million. Very impressed. Oh.
I don't have a prize.
Damn. We can't buy her. So there you go. You're on camera, guys.
No, I only stay behind camera.
You only stay behind cameras?
I don't like it. That's why I do theatre, so I don't have to be.
That's all I have to say.
Is that it? I hope so.
Do not just make tea. Keep away from my computer screen. It is not porn.
You're freaking out here. I don't know what I'm saying.
You talk about sports.
Huh?
You talk about Kevin and sports.
Yeah, but you know, Kevin is sports and music. That's why I say aerobic music.
Oh, okay.
It's a new term, I guess.
He's actually running.
Yep, he's running. He's a couple of runners.
Thanks, Dad. Not staring, is it? No! What did you catch?
It was a piece of music that Kevin was playing most of the time.
It's called a score.
From this album.
Let me just get the... I'll get the soap and I'll be back. So what did you want to ask? This is the perfect contrast to the Cerebellium experience. I'm washing my hands myself. And I'm drying them myself. While still using the same soap and the same towels. Right. So you want to ask a question?
It was in my dreams. Cerebellium was there. I can't remember specifically how. But we definitely did live it and dream it. while it was going on. And you know, it was a nice surprise, you know, just how much I enjoyed the whole experience and got so much out of it. It was wonderful working with a team of people and just being involved in something so wonderful.
Oh, whoa, 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 no. That's a bad drawing.
I love you all so much. Te amo mucho. Σας αγαπώ πολύ. Kisses.
Okay, how's that? Okay. Imaginary Kevin.